What is up, guys? It's Halsey Schider with the Helicopter Podcast. And look, I'm a broken record sometimes, but one of my favorite things about doing the podcast is being able to connect with new friends in the helicopter industry. It's very easy for the helicopter industry to feel small because honestly, it is. But through this podcast, I would say at least 50% of the guests that I talk to are people that I've never met, I've never talked with before. And literally, I go right into an interview with knowing very little about them. The whole premise actually is like this idea of like, if we were to meet each other at a bar or go into a restaurant, figure out that we were both helicopter pilots, what would we talk about? And so that's kind of the purpose. And today is exactly that. This was a referral through my buddy Wesley. He was like, hey, man, you got to have Todd Schultz on the show. And so we started talking with Todd via email. And here we are. Before we get started, big shout out to MHM Publishing and the whole Vertical Valor and Skies family. And of course, the HeliCASTS platform put to you by Vertical MHM. So just so grateful for their partnership and their support, and to all of our sponsors. It's just tremendous. So Todd, welcome to the Helicopter Podcast. How are you?
Doing well. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I think an easy icebreaker is the picture behind you. What's going on there?
So this picture right here is of a 212 we have here at the hangar. The gentleman you see on, I guess it'd probably be your right. This guy right here, he's been all over the place, just throughout the world doing, he's actually our mechanic. He's our chief mechanic. And he's just been all over the place working on Hueys and 212s and 214s. And so we're fortunate enough to have him here. And he works on all our aircraft along with a couple other mechanics. And so it's also a fun machine to fly. I love the sound of the Hueys and the 212s. It's awesome.
Yeah,
sound.
there's really nothing better sound like the puh, and the.
I love it. I used to use actually the Hueys and A-stars for fire suppression, search and rescue, and it just never gets old. That sound just never gets old to me.
Put a little CCR in the background, a little Fortunate One or Fortunate Son. Really, it's like your quintessential Vietnam movie soundtrack with the blades beating and CCR blaring. So yeah, it's a super cool aircraft. In fact, I don't have any experience in any type of helicopter like that. All my experiences are I guess the biggest helicopters I've ever flown is like an H-130 or a Bell 407. So I've actually never been in like a Bell medium or anything like that. I guess let's start kind of from the beginning, Todd, and work our way to you flying 212s and doing search and rescue and fires and things like that. Just give me a little bit skinny of your background.
Yeah, so I started back in 2003 flying helicopters, got my license in 2004. I was fortunate enough to be able to start flying with my brother-in-law and worked construction to be able to pay for my training. That took a while. But got my license in 2004, paid cash to get my private. And then I ended up doing some flying in, it was 2007 over in the Philippines. My cousin and I started a project over there where we used helicopters as ability to get patients out of the mountains and stuff like that. Because some of the areas, like we started in Palawan in the Philippines, and that's that long skinny island to the south. You could have a walk that could take you half a day to walk. And even in an old 269 Alpha, like what we had to start out with, that thing could make the flight in 3 to 5 minutes. But it's rugged there. It's very
wow.
And no joke, you'd have people, sometimes they'd show up in the clinic that had fallen out of their fields. So picture that, falling out of a field. Mostly for those of us who have been in the United States for the most part, you don't have fields on areas where you can fall out of your field.
Yeah. What does that even mean? Like it's like a cliff on the end of their field or something.
They will do fields literally on just mountains that are steep like this, where most people in America wearing cleats would have a hard time staying on it. They're doing it in their bare feet.
What's the crop that grows on a hill like that?
A lot of times they'll do corn.
Interesting.
It's crazy what they'll do, but yeah, it's some steep areas. So
you and your brother, let me get this straight. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. You and your brother-in-law started a program in.
It was my cousin.
It was your cousin?
Yeah, my cousin.
Okay, your cousin. Sorry. Your cousin, you learn how to fly, you get in an aircraft, and you go to the Philippines, and you're providing these medical flights. How did that even become a thing?
Okay, sorry, I need to correct myself on that one. I thought you were referring to flying in the Philippines. So to learn to fly was with my brother-in-law. You were correct there. And then when we went to the Philippines, it was my cousin and myself. We started a program there. So we knew people in the Philippines that had already been working as missionaries for quite some time. And we were in contact with one of the guys that was doing that work. And, or I should say I was in contact. And then later, I had a conversation with my cousin, and he and his family had their house burned down. He'd been flying in the military, flying Blackhawks and stuff like that. And he and I had a conversation. He felt like there's more to life than what he was doing. He wasn't a Christian or anything really at that time. And we had a conversation. He's like, don't really have anything else going on. And we had access to be able to take a 1961 Hughes 269 Alpha over there. So we ended up shipping that over, and since my cousin was able to get out of the military briefly for doing some of that work, he headed over there first. My wife and I were still here in the States, and we got a project going over there. Actually, we have 4 bases now. So let's see, Luzon, Palawan, and Mindanao. So, but 4 separate bases.
And this is a Christian organization that is providing essentially aviation services to the Philippines?
Yeah, so basically what it is that it's like medevac as an example, because they don't have the finances to be able to help. So like, for instance, you could have a person who gets hurt up in the mountains. Since it's so hard to get them out, a lot of times what they'll end up doing is waiting until they're about ready to die. And they're like, well, we got to get them out now because they're going to probably die otherwise. The local people, I'm saying. Then they'll put, the normal thing is to have basically a basket on their back. And they'll put the person in a basket in their back and haul them out. And they're supporting it off a strap that goes all along their head. And they're just carrying them down the trails that.
My gosh.
It's harsh stuff in some of those areas. If it's more in a flat area, they'll have some type of makeshift stretcher out of like bamboo or something like that and haul somebody out. Well, we got aircraft over there to be able to, you can cut out a landing zone on the edge of a mountain, on a ridge line, and land the helicopter there, load somebody up, and get them down to medical help. And like the very first rescue I did over there, the lady had, I can't remember what the different issues were, but it was like 3 separate things, all of which could kill her independently. And was able to load her on and get her out with that old machine, super slow machine, but you know what? It helped save a lot of lives. And that's
incredible.
Since been sold, and then went into 44s and 66s. We had an Alouette over there until it disappeared. Have no idea what happened to it. It disappeared when coming back from one of the very far south islands. That's when the Philippine military and a bunch of people from the U.S. and everything, they tried to do a search and rescue, find where Daniel went, and we still don't know where.
Oh no!
So
wow. But when was that?
So that was, oh man, what has it been? I'm bad with dates. It's been a year and a half ago, something like that.
Oh no!
But
that's tragic. I'm sorry to hear that. So you started this mission, and it's still going today. You guys are using 44s, 66s, and you're still part of the organization?
I help out a little bit in the U.S. side. One thing that when we started that project up, I was really firm on the thing of people in the U.S. should not be the ones controlling it. That was a big thing, because you're here in the U.S., you don't have a clue what's going on over there. The people there on site need to be the ones making the decisions. And my cousin's been doing very well at that. And he's the one that's been really taking care of everything. I actually have a couple of the mission pilots here now that I've been doing some of my technique training in the 66 for them. and they're going to be going over there. One of the guys has been over there for a while, he and his family. And another missionary pilot is going to be going over there after I get done training with him. So
Very cool. And what is the name of the mission?
PAMAS, so Philippine Adventist Medical Aviation Services.
Wow.
And
well, we can maybe put some more in the description of the episode here. You can make sure that you email me that.
Okay.
Is it 100% financed through donation?
It is. It sure is. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, one of the missionaries that I'm training here, he's actually somebody who he's actually working. Well, I should say he lives currently in Canada, and he'll come back, work long enough in Canada so that he can get the finances to then finance his own time over there. So, I mean, just fully devoted people. And one of the things I'm particular about when starting the programs, I want to make sure that, like when I was talking with my cousin about the whole process of getting this going, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't like a paid vacation for people to go over there. Because then you get people who aren't really sincere about what they're doing, right? You know, it's like, oh, beautiful. I want to go over there and do some flying, enjoying my time. The people who are there, they're doing it off their own finances, off donations, and they survive, but it's not like they have a big income. But they're there because they actually want to be there. They feel like that is where they should be at this time. And so it's awesome what God has done to open that up. The red tape. So you know how it is to get into a third world country and the bribing that oftentimes has to take place. What took place for us to be able to get that machine in there was nothing short of miraculous. And how cheap it was for us to get in there, it's just pretty much unheard of. How fast we were able to build the organization there was just pretty much unheard of, because they don't necessarily move all that rapidly on most anything. So,
and you said that organization's been going since like around the 2007 timeframe?
Yes, sir.
Man, congratulations. That's really cool. There's a mission that we do some work with. My background is, I'm a pilot, but also have a company called HeliCASTS. And, we help people buy and sell aircraft. Shameless plug. And hey, Red, if you got a platform, you got to use it.
You got to use it.
Hold on. Let me get a good shot here. There it is. And it's a large Christian organization as well that provides, helicopters and airplanes. I think kind of all over, but particularly I think in maybe Papua New Guinea and in Africa.
Oh, very cool.
And a cool organization. They take great care of their aircraft as well. And but yeah, that's neat to hear about that. I've never. That's nothing I've never been a part of, to be honest. I have a faith myself. I don't know if I have a faith that's so compelled that I would, go and, essentially almost volunteer my time. I think that takes a really special person to do something like that. How long does the average pilot stay working with you guys?
We know you love helicopters. That's why you're here. But are you ready to make it a career? Hillsboro Heli Academy has been making dreams of flying helicopters come true since 1980. Visit us at flyhaa.com and dream big.
Well, some of them have been there for years. So I don't know the average time, actually. My cousin's been, of course, over there since 2007 and then heading it up since then. So he'll come back. Like right now, he's in the U.S. doing some additional training and getting some more things done here to get stuff shipped over. But he's been over there since then. And so we've had, one of the pilots has been there for must be 6 years now. And
wow.
So there's been, they have been doing well. We also do have fixed wing as well. Multiple fixed wing that we use over there as well.
Wow. You guys are just on fire. I love it.
One thing I'd like to point out, though, is that, you're saying you don't know if you have the faith for that. The thing is, you're a missionary. Like I say, you're a missionary for either God or the devil, no matter where you're at. Right?
It's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
it's true.
Some of us do it here. Some of us do it elsewhere. It doesn't matter where you're at, as long as you're doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's really incredible thing. I really admire. And honestly, I don't just admire the mission part of it. I admire just the operation part of it as well, because operating helicopters, airplanes is so difficult. It's so unforgiving. It's really a horrible business, actually, for most people, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact to do it for, a nonprofit and to run it for so many years, this is making me feel old, but for the easy math for me is I'm coming up on my 20-year high school reunion here in a couple years. So, I mean, you guys are like 17 years into this. That's an impressive feat. For anyone. Are you training any in-country Filipinos to fly there as well?
Not so much the Filipinos, because most of them have not had they're trained for other purposes, not so much for the piloting, because for one thing, is a big issue with many is that if you've not grown up with this stuff, it's a lot harder for you to catch on and do well at it. You can be trained, definitely, and they are trained, and the local people, they do so much work there, but they're doing a lot of the work for the in-person stuff, because they know that because they have so many different dialects there, so many different languages. And so they've been doing so much of the in-person type work that the rest of us don't have the skill set to do. And so the locals are being used, and they're being used as nurses, and they're being used as Bible workers, as pastors, as teachers, because also they're doing school work over there too. So yes, the locals are definitely being used, not so much on the piloting side.
Interesting.
So far.
So walk me through like a day in the life of a missionary pilot in the Philippines. Like, you get up, what's your responsibilities? How do you get notified? Like if someone's fallen off their field, which is a funny thing to say. And, I'm guessing it's so primitive that there's maybe not cell phones or phones or whatever. How is it all relayed? I used to fly air medical in Texas, and, we had lots of systems and lots of technology that would assist in that, first world country type of operation. So I'm curious to hear, like, what does a day in the life look like for one of your pilots?
So it'll depend on where you're located, but what it will be is a lot of times you'll be up pretty early in the morning, and start with praying is a good way to start your day, right? It's praying and studying the Bible. Then from there, have a breakfast, and then you'll have, sometimes people have called the day before, because you do have people that end up going to a location where there's a clinic or something like that.
Okay.
And they'll have cell phones. Like the Philippines, if I remember correctly, the Philippines is the most texted country on earth. In other words, they do so much texting.
Interesting.
Because it costs a lot to call, but they'll do a lot of messaging. So they send text.
Interesting.
And like when I was over there one time, the guy's swimming over to the boat. He's holding up his phone, texting as he's swimming to the boat.
Nice.
They're very devoted in their texting, but they'll get maintenance that has to be done. People are there working with the gardens, the farms, depending on who it is. As the pilot themselves, oftentimes they'll go get their aircraft ready, pre-flight the aircraft, get it ready. And for people who have had calls prior, then let me clarify something. Over there, it's not like here where we can just fly at night. Over there, you're not flying at night. It's not allowed.
Sure.
Unless you're military.
Okay.
And so for them, they don't have to worry about that. They need to be on the ground before it gets dark, and they can't leave before it gets light. So they have time to pre-flight the aircraft, get it all fueled up. One of the things with fueling over there, it's like usually through 55-gallon drums. You don't have the fancy pump systems we have in a lot. Exactly right. Manual way. And so they'll fuel up the aircraft and, of course, decide on how far they're going, and have, in some cases, they have to have fuel available in different locations that they're doing the island hopping. So they can contact their sources on in the different areas to make sure that they have the resources necessary. And they'll load up a nurse or some other individual that's medically inclined, helper, to be able to go to another spot. Of course, the airplanes are used to do the long hops usually, because there's, depending where you read, but the official thing is basically 7,107 islands is what they say over there. Now, obviously, a lot of them,
wow,
a lot of them are not inhabited, but because some of them are just little sandbars, but technically an island. And then they'll fly out sometimes for hours in one direction before they get to the location they need to be at to pick up the person. They do the evaluation they need to do, and then can send the information back to the hospital, the clinic they're going to take care of their work when they get back, so the person can be, or the people that are going to be taking care of the individual can kind of be prepped ahead of time. But the nuances of everything, I wouldn't be the right person to ask, because I haven't been over there as far as that, working that side. I've done the
sure.
I was over there, what was it, just earlier this year, that I was doing some training over there for them. But as far as the nuances of every detail, that my cousin would be the pro in that for sure.
Interesting. Well, it's very cool, man. Do you know about how many helicopter hours you're flying in the Philippines every year?
Oh, that's a
Let's
very
put you on
good
the spot.
I would say it'd be probably about 600, I would guess.
Wow.
Something like
So I mean,
that.
you guys are really, I mean, you're saving a lot of people. That's really,
and
really something.
and it will depend, because sometimes it has to be more of the airplane stuff. So it could be as low as just a few hundred hours, and then more of the time in the airplane. So it just depends where it's located.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's very good.
We recently sold an aircraft to the Philippines, and man, it's quite the process actually for the Philippines to register an aircraft. We had to do things here in the United States that we had never done. I mean, traditionally, right, you get an export C of A, that's all pretty standard. But then we had to do all these, we had to apostille all these documents, which we have actually never had to do before for a deal. Essentially like having the Secretary of State essentially notarize all these documents and things. So it's kind of a complicated process getting them over. But, look, at Helicopter, we can do anything.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so subtle.
Very subtle.
Well, that's really cool, Todd. And again, one more time, what is the name of the organization?
So pamasmission.org. So it's PAMAS, or Philippine Adventist Medical Aviation Services. And if they just put in pamas.org or something like that, or Philippine Adventist Medical Aviation Services, then they'll be able to pull it up. We'll have it up there on Google.
I'm going to check it out right now. I'm going to pamas.org as we go here. Just going to open it up.
Yep.
And yeah, if you're interested in learning more about it, go ahead to pamas.org. And it looks like the site exists. Can people donate directly on the website?
They sure can. Yep. There's multiple ways to donate, and different sources you can donate. So you can get the tax receipts and all that kind of good stuff as well. So it makes it nice, but it's only through the donations that it's being done. People have been really, or we're like the one missionary where he comes back to Canada, works and helps himself get some money, and then go over there and spends his money until he needs more money and comes back and works. So that shows a devoted pilot right there. Yeah,
it really is. Devoted person, man.
Yeah.
It's well, there's still good people in the world. That's good.
Amen.
And it's pretty wild. It's so primitive. You think of the Philippines, really. I don't know why I think it's more, I didn't know it was that kind of primitive, really, to be honest. My sister-in-law is from the Philippines, grew up in the United States, first generation American, but I just don't have, I didn't really have that idea and that perception. So that's, really fascinating. And again, to our listeners, if you're interested in learning more, we'll provide details in the episode description, both on the YouTube and in the narrative. So, feel free. Any social media or anything like that, Todd?
They do. And I'm not the person who does anything with social media, so I don't have any of that stuff.
Go to Facebook and search Pamas. I'm sure something will come up, and you can work your way around.
I'm very old school with probably a whole lot of stuff, actually.
Well, I got to give you credit. You got on here. 9 times out of 10, it's a bit of a headache trying to get our guests aligned, and you got on pretty much right on time, and the audio audio sounds good. The video looks good.
Well, they say, even a blind squirrel gets a nut once in a while. So
that's true. That's really true. Well, you mentioned training, having guys come back, and you're training in the R66. Our mutual contact, Wes, earlier when I was chatting with him and kind of trying to get a little bit more of a skinny on you, since we're kind of shotgunning this episode, which I love, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. He mentioned that you have a unique perspective on training, and I don't really know what that means. And so, do you consider yourself having a unique perspective on training?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
I wouldn't think so. I think I just have a way that's practical. One thing I say is, first off, we should, in my opinion, we should always filter everything we do and everything we train, everything, the reason why we do what we do, we should filter it through mechanical physics, aerodynamics, human psychology, and rules and regulations. I think we should always do that, because then those things don't care about your opinion or mine, right?
It's true.
And I think that is so important to do it, because way too often we get in this mindset of, well, I was taught, my instructor said, or the FAA says, and again, I know we have everything for a reason. I'm not saying that. But we need to question why sometimes. As an example, you were probably taught, and I was taught, we did what was called, like you'd say in R-22, a 5 to 7 foot hover, and you do a hovering power out, which was called a hovering auto, right? Tell me, how can you be in an auto-rotative descent when you're in ground effect?
when you're in a hover? Don't put me on the spot, Todd.
Well, see, that's the whole point. We unfortunately...
You can't.
Yeah, exactly right. We cannot. And so, but we get trained that we have this mentality of, well, that's what my instructor said. That's what the FA books all say, right? I mean, every book I've ever read,
100%.
it says hovering auto. It's like, yes, you have a hovering auto, but you have to be way out of ground effect, because you have to get it. You have to descend faster than your induced flow, thus your downdraft. You have to descend faster than that to be able to go to enough velocity that can now accelerate your blade and keep them spinning. You can't do that in ground effect. You're not able to do that in a hover and ground effect. You have to call it a hovering auto, or something as simple as, what do they call it? A hover taxi. You know, tell me, how are you staying stationary and moving forward all at the same time, or sideways or backward or whatever else? You can't. A hover by definition is what? We have to be at a stationary point, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yet we have this mentality. We go through these different things and we just get so accustomed to something being incorrect that we think is correct. So, look, so one of the things that I'm big on is I know what the new advisory circular states about auto rotations, all that kind of stuff. I'm not okay because the principle of primacy of this whole smoothly lower the collective and reduce throttle. Every single person, no matter how many hours they have, if they're in a lighter inertia system, I've even done it in Bell 206s, by the way, where I split the needles on somebody, they would have stalled the rotor. Because they have this mindset, principle primacy, they have all this time. So I like to do things in a practical sense. What is the end goal? How can we reach that goal? Well, like in auto rotations as an example. End goal is you want to make sure everybody lives through the situation. Engine failure, you want to live through it. If you're teaching a person that they have multiple seconds to get your collective down before you have a stall, principle of primacy dictates that's not going to turn out well. It's physics. And something that, back when it was still considered perfectly fine to do, throttle chops. In an R-22, you're out, like when I was doing some training out west for people, you get over 9,000 DA in R-22 doing auto rotation.
Mm-hmm.
As fast as you could physically twist that throttle, the horn was on.
Yeah, it's like no time.
That's right. And so, and that's literally as fast as you could physically twist the throttle, the horn would be on. So you're going full arc in to less than 97% in just a split second. So, people get this idea of like, well, according to the manufacturer, you have 2.3 seconds, right? That they measured it at Torrance, California. It's like, but people don't correlate the high density altitude.
Yeah, sea level.
That's right. So they had this mindset, oh yeah, we can lower our collective slowly. It's like, well, when I was check airman for the Hueys, yeah, unfortunately, you can be really lazy. You can lower a collective slowly.
Of course.
But in a lot of aircraft, you can't. If you do that, it will be a stall. So I like to approach things from a perspective of what gives you the desired outcome. Well, one thing for sure, if you put people in a realistic scenario, you will find out the weaknesses that are there. You will find out that the normal industry standard way of training doesn't work for actual true engine out. And the stats prove it now too. Look at how many accidents have even onboard systems to show RPM, airspeed, rate of descent, all these different things. And we can even have video footage of it. And you look what happens. The way that we are training currently doesn't work for a train in and out. And I know what the regs say, or not the regs, but the powers that be state, well, we're damaging a lot of aircraft for, something that rarely happens. Well, that can be true, but the problem is, what about the person that does have that issue? I have.
Sure.
And I'll tell you what, when you have an engine out, which I have had, I had it during ag spraying. You're not very high above the ground when that fails.
No, horrible place to have that.
But thankfully, because of the way I've kind of trained myself as well, is that the whole time I was doing it, I was literally saying out loud, man, I love the way this thing auto rotates. But the thing is, you don't have to be nervous when you've been training yourself a lot, right? And unfortunately, in our industry, we have this mindset for so many people where even the CFIs are nervous about auto rotations.
Of course.
Which is ridiculous.
So let me ask this then, because I'm fascinated, and obviously I can tell you're passionate about training, which is cool.
Yes, sir.
I can definitely say from my CFI experience, I got very comfortable with auto rotations. I did so many, but I was very, very lucky too. I was able to. I worked as a CFI for a long time. I got to teach fold downs for almost 3 years straight. Like I felt very good. I had great mentor pilots, great instructor pilots. So many awesome, experiences. And even actually when I started training, we were still doing unannounced throttle chops at Hillsboro.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was an accident during my training right before my CFI where they suspect it was a unannounced throttle chop and an improper recovery. Again, showcasing just the margin that you have and how slim it is.
That's right.
That resulted in a low RPM blade stall from, 2,000 feet. Accident obviously ended up being a fatality.
Yes.
So that changed. So we no longer did, unannounced throttle closures. We would kind of do some things like, okay, engine failure, 3, 2, 1, and look, I get it. I was fine with that. I was getting paid $15 an hour. So part of me was like, look, I'm not getting paid enough to like legit put my life at risk.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a CFI, you can be really prepared for it and hopefully, make the right correction. But that said, walk me through if you and I are flying right now, and I'm an experienced pilot, I'm a commercial pilot, but I'm exactly who I am right now, which is a guy that doesn't fly very often.
Mm-hmm.
I hung up the flight helmet 4 years ago full time, and in the last 4 years I haven't flown a ton. I fly occasionally at best, just because it's not my primary business anymore. So you and I are flying together right now, and we're going to do some engine out training. What does it look like in the Robinson product?
Okay, so if we're which one, 22, 44, would it matter to you? Just any of those?
It doesn't matter, but let's go. The 44 is becoming a little bit more prevalent in the training world. More and more schools are working towards the 44. So let's go in the 44.
Okay, so first starting off, since I hadn't ever flown with you before, what I would do is that I would just start reducing the throttle slowly. I would not give you an announcement because I am always having the mindset, the engine, since I've actually had it as well, engines can fail anytime at very inconvenient times. So instead of telling you what's going to happen, I'm just always going to do something and make sure it's always within the parameters that I can personally handle, even if you mess up, because I want to be firm enough, quick enough on the controls to allow that to take place. So what I do for the first 1 or 2, just to kind of feel you out, see where you're at, I just start reducing the throttle, not real fast, so it wouldn't be like a chop or anything like that. It'd be more like just a reduction, like, whoa, and where you can be like, okay, this is happening. Now I'm going to see how fast your response is. From what I have seen by most people, and I've flown with people all the way up to over 50,000 hours. They were flying since before I was born. It literally is, for the majority of people, they still do not get their collective down in time. And they take way too long to get collective down, cyclic aft. Of course, if you're going to do it in sequential order, cyclic aft first, then collective down if you had to do it sequential order. But simultaneous is obviously the best for energy management. Then I just let you try to do an auto rotation and let's see how you're doing. And then I get to the point where it's like, okay, I want you to make this spot. Now, there's something that I find that most people just simply don't do. So I'd start getting a quicker reduction. Now, what you can do instead of throttle chop, you can split the needles where you're just splitting it by a couple percent, right? You don't have to do a full throttle chop. You just split the needles because it was full auto rotation immediately, but you still have a good RPM. So you have power available right away, but you're getting a split in the needles. So I'd split the needles on you, then reduce it below 80% so that you're not fighting against the governor. And I'd tell you a spot you had to go to. And I'd start seeing how well are you able to handle your energy management to get to your spot. And because again, you're a rated pilot, right? You're not just a primary student that's just starting out and that needs to be taught this whole process. So I'd be just seeing, okay, where are you at? I know that the FAA, I think currently what is 100-foot radius, right? As a commercial pilot, I think is what they say, 100-foot radius for a commercial pilot from your spot.
Yeah, I don't know actually.
I can't remember because I personally don't tolerate that. Because the way I look at it is, if you can land the helicopter within a box the size of your skids with the engine on, well, you can also do that with the engine off. If you're within glide distance, you can do it with the engine off. So what I do with my students is I just start, I'd be working with you, would be like, okay, let's see if you can make your spot. Let's see how far away you were. And I most of the time, for somebody who's not flying all the time, when I split the needles, again, not a throttle chop because they don't like that anymore, but I would split the needles because I refuse to train the other way because it is deadly. And so I'd split the needles so the principal primacy is strong with you just to be able to respond correctly, because that's how an engine does fail. If you're fortunate enough for it to count down to you and say 3, 2, 1, well, you have a different engine than I have.
That'd be nice.
So yeah,
that's $1 million idea.
Yeah, would that be a novel idea? And then when I split the needles, I would split it at inconvenient times, depending on what your skill set is, and just get you so you can do it better and better and better. And then I'd start naming spots to you. So at first, I just want you to respond, get good RPM control, and speed control as necessary. Obviously, speed is, I don't care about speed at all until you're getting down towards your level off. You'd be going 0 as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. As long as you have a proper speed for the particular aircraft you're in at level off, that makes it easy for you. Then I'd start, again, giving you a spot to aim for. But I'd start taking the engine out on you at times that are inconvenient. So how in the private it was kind of like, okay, my spot's coming up on check right even. Your spot's coming up and you would decide, okay, I'm going to enter in 3, 2, 1, and you lower your collective and so on. Well, what about now you're 500 feet and you're above your spot? So I'd take your engine out then too, and get you to learn the techniques to be able to make your spot. Because you get a certain altitude there, you're not doing a full turn. You're not going to do a 180 and make your spot, because you can get to a certain, depending on your winds and or altitudes, you can get a parameter there that you can't make that turn. But what you can do is down collective a little bit, aft cyclic, flare up, you actually fly backwards, then you'll do a power pedal slip to your spot. And it works fantastic. It's very important to use power pedal for that slip, however, because that way you can manage RPM control, which then takes horsepower out of your tail rotor, right? Which then translates to taking energy out of your main rotor. And then at that point, you're forced to lower your collective more just to maintain RPM. So then we get you to the point where you can start so you can hit your spot. So I had to start you out slow. Again, start you out slow, nothing complicated, straight in auto, just to see how you are. And then from there, get it more and more complex, all the way to the point of be able to hit your spot at any parameter as long as you're within glide distance. So it just really depends on the person's skill set, but you always are building on what you have, going from the known to the unknown. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And what I can say personally, actually, I was just at the Robinson safety course. In fact, you can go on YouTube and you can watch my experience while I was at the Robinson safety course. I'm just plugging so much. I never do this, Todd. I don't.
The link.
I don't ever plug so much. But it's a cool video. Had a good experience. And look, like I told Todd, I was flying advanced auto rotation maneuvers every single day, all day, for almost 3 years straight. And so I was, as Todd's saying, I could be over my spot. I could, go backwards. I could pedal. I could do it all. Like I felt like I was put a pair. Was the helicopter was a pair of pants, and I was doing my thing.
Yep.
And then I go to Robinson, haven't flown for a long time, and I'm doing advanced auto rotations, and not even that advanced, some small tweaks on airspeed, adjusting and pulling RPM for max glide, things like that. And it took a while to knock that rust off.
Yeah.
And so, I think in a practical sense, obviously, if you could train with an instructor that had that comfortability all the time from 0 to hero, that would be great. I don't think that's practical because there's not enough flight schools that are allowing the instructors to take it there. And I think that's maybe a different argument for a different day, honestly. But, I think what I'm hearing from you is it's good to go and fly with people that are very well-versed with advanced auto rotations, and people that are able, no matter where you're at in your experience, whether you're new or not so new, whatever it is, going and flying with an instructor that can feel so comfortable within that particular airframe and can put it into different configurations to really show you how to make that spot. I totally agree. I think it's totally missed in ab initio training. I think it's something that it's so easy, right? I remember doing my autos for my private. I'm like, they look back like, okay, you're kind of within your spot. Sure, you pass, right? Like, so I totally get what you're saying. And I even saw it recently. I mean, man, the rust was so much rust.
Yes.
And so I really encourage, here's something that I'm curious to hear your opinion on. I've been able to attend a couple OEM schools, Robinson, Bell, and something that they've talked a lot about, and I think this kind of goes along with primacy and or repetition or whatnot, is this idea of people entering auto rotations when they don't actually have to. And because we're taught to lower collective, aft, right, roll off, right? Like this, like we're rolling off our throttle. And so a pilot's in the cockpit, they're getting an indication of something. Maybe they think it's an actual engine failure. And so what do? They lower collective, aft cyclic, right pedal, roll off throttle, do the auto rotation, they land, the engine's still running. I thought the engine was out. And apparently, I don't remember what the statistic was. It's been a long time, but this was from the Bell School actually, is there was a staggering statistic of people doing full down auto rotations in helicopters that in fact did not have an engine failure. How do you rectify that? How do you teach that?
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
So to me, one of the huge things we need to be doing is, for one thing, is don't be listening to a bunch of racket through your headset while you're flying. If you're listening to a bunch of garbage, I don't care what it is. It could be even a good podcast. It doesn't matter. If you're listening to anything that's...
Yeah, don't listen to my podcast while flying. Driving, cool. Flying, don't do it.
That's the issue. Is that
people do it though. Actually, I've definitely heard people.
Oh yes, and here's the thing though: how can you be hearing your RPM change of your rotor blades, or of your
100%.
gearboxes, or of your engine, if you're listening to a bunch of other racket? Our ears can only comprehend a certain amount of stuff, right? Bringing in a certain amount of information. So, and our brains can only comprehend a certain amount as well. So, if you're having this distraction or interference, as we can call it, is you will not have the ability to pay attention to the exact details you need to pay attention to. For instance, you have TAC go out, your horn comes on, and everything's indicating you had an engine failure. But engine's still running. It just got a little device that decided to quit working for you. If you are listening to your engine, you're listening to that, like if you're in a turbine or the recip, it doesn't matter which, you're listening to that pitch of that aircraft sound. You know the limitations that it's normally supposed to be in within your green arc. If you are listening to that, I tell people, is don't pay attention to the horn. Who cares about that horn? You should be paying attention to everything else. Why should a horn? That horn?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't even understand, quite honestly, the point of having a horn. How is it that you can be so dull? Trying to think of nice words. How can you be so dull that you need to have an alarm go off to let you know your engine had failed? How is it that you could not be listening to your engine pitch change? That pitch would change before you're even hardly feeling any difference in yaw, because it's mass. Mass takes time to react. So you're going to hear that engine change before you even start feeling a yaw, if you're actually paying attention. And then you can hear the rotor blades. The rotor blades change pitch. Your gearboxes change pitch. If you're listening to that stuff, you could hear the horn come on and be like, well, I know the engine's still running. But you're cognizant enough to pay attention to the other signals that can prove to you the engine is still running. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with lower collective. And a lot of times what I'll tell people, if you truly don't know what's going on, lower collective. I'm not a fan of the whole time of, I'm not a fan of this whole idea of chop throttle.
Absolutely.
If you think you have an engine failure, the engine's already quit. Why do you need a chop throttle yet?
Just lower the collective.
Lower the collective, enter an auto, because now you can know and have time that you are an auto-rotated descent. Now you can troubleshoot and make sure it's an actual engine failure if you weren't paying attention to the pitch and everything else. Because if the audible sounds changed, you should have been able to tell that already. But let's just say you're extra slow. Well, enter an auto, that's fine. Don't chop the throttle off, that's foolish. Then identify if you actually had an engine failure. And then from there, then you can correct as necessary. If it's a pull down, I mean, like for instance, if you're coming down, like you said, the stats, these people had an engine running and they're doing full downs as if it's an engine failure. If they would have entered an auto and kept their engine up, or even if they would have, even if they did drop the throttle down, if they're paying attention, they should be able to identify these things. This is ridiculous that they're not identifying these things. But why drop the throttle? The engine already took care of that for you if it was an engine failure. So no use to chop the throttle. Lower your collective, enter an auto, and then troubleshoot. If it truly is an engine out, and you know it's a true engine out, and you're going down, and you want to make sure that engine doesn't come on at the last second because your pedal control is pretty bad, and you might not be able to handle it if the engine came back at the last second. Well, for one thing, I'd suggest get some remedial training, because if you can't handle an engine coming back at the last second because your pedal work is so bad, you really need to get some more training in so that you can handle it.
You got bigger problems. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, I think foolish is one way to put it, but I also think that it's also just the way it's trained, right? Whereas if you do something 1,000+ times one way,
Mm-hmm.
and then you never talk about it, like that was my case, right? I was a higher time instructor prior to going to that Bell school, and then I went to Bell school, and they brought that up, and no one had ever had that conversation with me. So all my students before that Bell school, even though it's intuitive, right? Maybe I should have just had the intuitive sense to talk about secondary indications like noise and yaw and other indications that you'll have. It wasn't something that was ever really preached through my training. So I monkey see, monkey do. I go to Bell school, and then I'm like, oh man, that's a crazy thought. And so I see how it happens, right? I see how if you do something 1,000,000 times one way, it can definitely have this negative transfer of learning of muscle memory or whatever. And so I think it's important as instructors to reiterate the importance of what are some other indications. And I love the fact that you're talking about the sound and things like that. I mean, if you're really in tune with your helicopter and you change one thing, example that I have is I remember I was flying tours in Vegas, and I was in the 130. So you're flying this same helicopter or same make model at least every single day, all day, a lot.
Yep.
You get to know it. You know what sounds right, what doesn't sound right. And I remember one day I'm thinking, man, helicopter's flying fine. I'm not getting any indication, but it does not sound right. Helicopter does not sound right. And it wasn't like a big avert change. It just didn't sound right. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And about halfway through, again, I'm kind of now on edge. We're flying out to the canyon, and I'm going through. I'm troubleshooting everything. There's nothing wrong with the helicopter. I'm not going to do anything. I'm deciding to, continue to fly. But man, it's a weird noise. And about halfway through, I'm like, oh, I'm wearing a hat. And I never wear a hat when I'm flying.
That's right.
And what it was doing is the hat is opening my Bose headset cup just a little bit. And so I just push it up, it's sealed. I'm like, oh, now it sounds like
Right.
I've and I actually liked that experience because it really proved a point to me that, I was really in tune with that machine. And so obviously the more experience you have in a helicopter, the better you become at really feeling it, understanding it. It's like when, my cousin was in town last week. I don't have a kid yet. I would like one, but we don't have one yet. And there's a little baby. The baby's crying. I'm like, what's the baby crying for? She's like, that sounds like a poop cry. And I'm like, oh, you could tell the baby's crying, or you could tell why the baby's crying based on the pitch. Oh yeah, that's a poop. And then, 2 minutes later, I'm like, yep, that was a poop cry for sure.
Right.
So it's interesting and you can be so in tune. So, I appreciate the fact that you're a passionate instructor, and I agree. I think real world, trying to make it as real as possible. They talked about it in sports and business all the time. Actually, practice like you play, visualize. I actually used to have dreams during flight school of me lowering the collective, because they really drove it into us at Hillsborough, like this idea of lowering the collective, getting it down really fast. I would wake myself up jerking by, lowering the collective. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things about training that are imperfect. And I think a lot of that's because it's cost prohibitive to go out and do a ton of extra training. If you're lucky as a student, you may only get, 25 hours of CFI training that's required for 141, where you're flying with a more advanced instructor. And maybe one or two of those lessons talks about advanced auto rotations. And then if you're like a guy like me that kind of gets stuck at the flight school for a long time, then you get the opportunity to teach that. So then you become really proficient. So, I definitely see where it comes, but I think it's a pilot's responsibility. If you're out there flying, go get extra training. You should be training and training and training all the time, as much as you can. And flying with people that are better, flying with people that are more experienced at certain things is such a great idea.
Sorry.
All right. Had some technical difficulties. Sounds like a bit of a storm passing through. So if there's a little bit of a cut in our conversation, I blame Todd. It's all his fault.
It was my fault for the rain.
Not my fault. But anyway, actually, Todd, we're actually kind of coming up on our time anyway. So, I really enjoyed the conversation. Before we go, though, it's fun talking about the Philippines. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole before, so that was fun to learn about that. Loved hearing your training perspective. Give me the 2-minute version of what you're up to now.
Well, currently working as I'd say an instructor pilot, but also a utility pilot for Wright Brother Aviation here in upstate New York, based out of Griffiths, and flying from 206 B3s. I barely hardly do anything with that machine behind us, but primarily B3s and L3 and L4s doing utility work. Power line patrol, gas line patrol will be the primary. Some other work that we do on the side for some other companies as well. So that's the primary stuff that we're doing.
And how long have you been at Wright Brothers now?
About 2.5 years, I guess now.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we've done. I know that one of my sales reps, Ian, is talks to those guys quite a bit, and I think you guys just picked up a Long Ranger from another New York-based company, and we're picking one up too from that same company. But we've had to reach out to you guys for some questions, so I know that that's been in the works. So yeah, very cool. Wright Brothers, all utility.
Yeah, primary utility. I mean, we do 135, 133, and I'm personally 137 as well.
Is it an homage to the Wright Brothers, or is it two brothers that actually have the same last name of Wright?
So it's more of it's not that they have the Wright brother name. It's more of a homage.
Okay, I've always kind of wondered, like, that would be ironic if it's
yeah, it would be worse, but it is not in this case. But it is two brothers and one of the brothers' wives as well that own the company.
Cool. Well, they must be doing something right. 2.5 years there. That's pretty good retention for the pilot world.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for coming on. Loved hearing your perspective on training. Seems like you probably have a lot more to say, so I think we'll have to have you on for another future episode.
I would like that because, unfortunately, I was blabbing too much about the other stuff and didn't get into some of the important things that we need to be doing in the.
No, it's good, man.
So
I think we hit everything. And plus, now that I'm a media superstar, I'm learning that you gotta keep people wanting a little bit more, right? You can't give it all.
Sounds good.
Right away. You gotta just leave a little bit hanging. So Todd, loved chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming on the Helicopter Podcast. To our listeners, thank you guys for listening. We are, of course, surpassed our 100th episode by the time this one's released. So I'm just so grateful for you guys. And again, grateful to our sponsors and MHM Publishing for the creation of the vertical HeliCASTS platform. Super cool. So grateful to be a part of it. And Todd, I love connecting with new people like you. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. I very much enjoyed it.
Thanks, Todd. See ya.
We'll see you later. Take care.
We know you love helicopters. That's why you're here. But are you ready to make it a career? Hillsboro Heli Academy has been making dreams of flying helicopters come true since 1980. Visit us at flyhaa.com and dream big.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
This podcast is brought to you by HeliCASTS. Tired of listings that go nowhere? Exhausted by tire kickers who waste your time? Don't sell your helicopter alone. HeliCASTS handles the entire process from start to finish. So, if your helicopter is sat too long waiting for a buyer, contact the team at HeliCASTS today for your complimentary market valuation. Call 1-855-HeliCASTS, 1-855-735-5226, or email sales@helicopter.com. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.